you ready? What?
What is up, people? Happy Tuesday.
Yes, super excited about tonight. We got a great guest.
We do. We got a lot to cover tonight. I think
do.
it's going to be a great show. For those of you who are joining us from Pursuit United's Patreon page, welcome.
Or don't know us.
for our regular Patreons and members out there, welcome again. Thank you. Another episode of Glam and Drams. It's Turkey Week.
Oh, man.
We're very busy. We got family prep going on. We got the BCS flying off here that we're shooting even more tonight after we're done here. So we just got a busy
I'm frying
schedule.
a turkey Thursday. Are you frying a turkey?
Don't burn the house down.
I'm a expert turkey fryer.
Yeah,
I'm brining it for 36 hours.
Nice. You know what? I'm scrapping the bird this year.
What?
We're doing little wings, the turkey legs, and I'm putting a big giant tomahawk and a rack of lamb.
I mean, I like that, but that's sacrilege. I mean, it's
not. We'll have a little bit of a turkey, but you know what? You can only have so much turkey, and they're big, and you never whatever.
Blasphemy.
It's fine. That's what we're doing.
Hey, you do what you want.
That's what we're doing. I've also got an update on that surprise Patreons who may not have known that little surprise drop we've got coming out for you.
That's a rum,
little early Christmas gift that we've got coming for you. The rum
we'll
guns. We'll get into that too. There you go. There's that preview coming up real soon.
You love that.
So you love that.
I do.
It's hard propping your bald head onto something to get the shadows right. By the way.
It does. It's
your. But before we go into all that good stuff, we are really excited for our guest tonight. We really are. This is, I think, the story here. I think everyone knows.
Well, maybe not.
Pursuit United, but if not, you're in for a little bit of a treat. And I just think the story is awesome. The juice is damn good, as to be expected. And we're really honored and excited to welcome from Pursuit United. Kenny Coleman. Kenny, what's going on?
Kenny, what's up, brother? Thanks for joining.
Hey, how's it going?
Todd, you didn't even give me your applause.
Sorry.
You normally do.
There we go.
I like the actual human applause. That was perfect.
the golf clap.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So, well, it's an honor to have you here, Kenny, and thank you for taking time out and coming to speak to our audience. So, how's it going? Happy Thanksgiving, I guess. You getting ready for Thanksgiving?
Happy Thanksgiving as well. It's kind of funny you talked about, putting on a lamb, rack of lamb or going with the steak. My family, so I came from, well, I guess I still come from a long line of, my mom's side is 100% Italian. My mom is 100% Italian. Her mom and dad, both 100% Italian. So pasta for Thanksgiving was pretty common growing up. Pasta, shredded beef, Italian sausage. They made a turkey just as like, well, I guess we're gonna make turkey, but you came for the pasta. That's what it was.
Is that how it was in your house? Your dad's side's 100% Italian, right? So he's 100%. So is that how it was in your household as well?
We did do the obligatory bird, but we also there was always some sort of pasta dish at the house. So I'm kindred spirit. I like that. Kenny knew I liked you.
Yeah, see.
So.
Long line of Italian heritage going on here.
Fellow paisans out there.
And I'm an Irish Catholic. What do you do?
So, now, before we dive into this, we always like to give the platform to our guest. I'm going to put the camera on you, and you're not camera shy, so you'll be fine. And just tell the world a little bit about yourself and about what you're doing, the good stuff going on at Pursuit. And the floor is yours, my friend.
Sure. Well, thanks, guys. Yeah. Well, this isn't awkward at all. It's funny.
Yeah. What'd you do that for? Anything?
No, we always
it's
do
fine.
that. It's good. You know what? He gets the spotlight.
It is funny because I see Jason from Mash and Drum.
Yep.
I see everybody that are able to do, and Fred does it as well. These one-person types of live streams, and I always come on here. I'm going like, what the fuck am I going to talk about?
Exactly.
I need somebody to bounce things off of. So I just never had that personality where I could just sit there and riff and talk to myself for, I don't know, 45 minutes straight, and then look at a few comments and then keep talking. But so yeah, hats off to those people that know how to do that. But yeah, so I'm Kenny. I am one third of Bourbon Pursuit, one half of Pursuit Spirits. Just to give you kind of a quick background to my history and our story. So the whole reason why we're here today, it started with an idea that my co-host Ryan Cecil had, where wanted to start a podcast, and he didn't know what it was going to be on. It was his brother-in-law that said, well, you're from Bardstown, bourbon capital of the world. Why don't you do a podcast on bourbon? And this is 2013 time frame. 2013. Yeah, it was a long time ago. So 2013 time frame, and just saying, you should do a bourbon podcast. And back at then, like there really wasn't much. There was Mark Gillespie from Whiskey Cast, which he still does a fantastic job out there today, but he covers the entire spectrum of whiskey. And he said, I think there's an opportunity here. And I said, I think there is too. Well, let's go ahead and get our really crappy MacBook, get a Blue Yeti microphone, and we'll travel all across central Kentucky and just interview people and just see what happens.
Right.
That was really just what kicked off Bourbon Pursuit, was just a love of bourbon, education, trying to find more things about it, and not really knowing where it was going to take us. I mean, it was a winter project. We had no idea if people were going to listen.
Right.
We didn't know much about video and audio editing and post-production. We didn't
Sounds
really
like us, Andy. It sounds exactly like us.
Sure
We still don't, but that's okay.
You find out the hard way real quick.
Yeah, right.
And we just kind of were like, well, let's just kind of see where it goes. And that was a project that, again, 6 months, 8 months, 12 months down the line, we were like, I don't really know about this. It's not really kind of working out. But one thing after the next started getting the snowball going, because it took, I think, 2 years before we ever saw our first dime of advertising revenue that came in.
Wow.
And even then, it's like, hey, a $200 sponsorship. I don't really think this equates to the 40 hours a week that I'm spending on it, but we'll just keep hustling through.
Right.
And then again, one thing after the next, we had started our own Patreon as well, and kind of were the first ones to really pioneer the whole barrel pick program as a part of Patreon. And
Super
we did
smart.
that, 2016 timeframe, somewhere around there. And that was just a way for us to, actually, we kind of stumbled upon it. I got a barrel pick, and we ended up selling it to our Patreon followers, and they just fell in love with it. And that's kind of when the aha moment came.
Do you remember what that single barrel was from? Like,
I remember exactly, because we did a bourbon community roundtable pick at Buffalo Trace.
Oh, wow.
For that. And I think it was a crazy yield. We had like 225 bottles that came out of that barrel. There's a whole other story behind that as well. But we ended up doing that barrel, and that kind of was the aha moment. Well, let's create something where we can invite more people to come in, join this club. And that's when the barrel picking club started. We felt really confident about it. Fred joined the show. Fred Minnick, for anybody that doesn't know him, you can go and check him out. He's
live right now, by the way.
Oh, is he? Okay.
Yes.
Well, he's yet another great person to follow. He's a wealth of knowledge that's inside of the world of bourbon. He brought us a lot of validity when he came on and joined the show, that more people took us a lot seriously as an actual media outlet when that happened. And then back in 2018, we talked about a brand on the podcast, and somebody reached out about a week later and said, hey, I helped build that brand. Would you be interested in starting your own? And now here we are, years later down the line, only about $8 million in debt, but we have 5,000 barrels to our name, and we're building a whiskey company out of it. And I think it's the most fun, stressful, aggravating yet rewarding thing I've ever done in my life.
Sounds awesome. I mean, that's a huge leap of faith, and we'll get to that, the Pursuit spirits and stuff. I want to kind of go back though to the podcast and how you also pioneered that area, right? So you were doing this in 2015 when there wasn't a lot out there. There weren't whiskey tubers everywhere, and you were doing the podcast scene, and you're still doing that. You're on YouTube, but your main focus is that podcast audience, and it's great. But you mentioned, I heard this, you say this a while ago, when you first started doing this, you wanted to be different, right? You didn't want to be just, let's drink whiskey, let's review it, let's just give a ton of information. You wanted to have a connection with the brands that people were drinking every day, right? So you wanted those people who are drinking Buffalo Trace or the Heaven Hills to find out exactly what was behind that brand and sort of make it personal to them. And you took that route with the podcast, and I think that's what really helped, because I think people really gravitate to that connection, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, and maybe it's a good and a bad thing. It's a bad thing because we never really branded ourselves. We were a conduit for other folks to just find their connection to Makers or Buffalo Trace or to Knob Creek or whatever it is, right? We were just a conduit. We were never really the faces per se.
Yeah.
It took years later until we felt comfortable enough. And that was the whole thing when this thing first started. I was like, I'm not going to be another jackass sitting around a microphone and saying, oh yeah, you should go trace this Knob Creek because I get, boysenberries off it. Like I don't like, why would you trust me? I'm nobody in this world.
That. I love that.
And so that was really the kind of sticking point, is like, if I want to listen to something, I'm going to watch something, I want to be coming away with either some form of entertainment or education.
Sure.
And it's not just some people spitting it off because they started, their whiskey collection last year and they think they know more about everything. Right. And that was really, I think I said it was a good thing because we relied on our guests to be the credibility that we needed. That's what got the people listening to the show. And it wasn't until years later that we even felt confident of doing reviews. And that ultimately spun from, we didn't do our first whiskey reviews until years later. And that's when the Whiskey Quickies came out.
I love that, because you've mentioned this before, not to shut you up, but the Whiskey Quickies are 5 minutes or less. And you mentioned this again, there's so many reviews, we've done it ourselves, where you have a 12, 13, 15-minute review. It's like, fast forward, do they like it or not? And you mentioned you can tell if we like a whiskey by the first sips we have and the reaction we have to that liquid, right? So you'll know right away whether we're or this is something special. And we try to do that now ourselves with doing shorts or all of our reviews. We try 5 minutes or less. We don't call it Whiskey Quickies, but that's what we just try to do, because I think that's what people want.
Quickies is a sore subject with Todd.
My wife would agree, probably. I don't know. There we go. So anyway, but
my wife would call me the trademark of it. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right. Yeah, we all have our crosses to bear. But those are every Tuesday. They came out today. You had a Whiskey Quickie that came out. So I love that, and that's also on YouTube as well. You push all that out on YouTube as well.
Yeah, and to be fair, we had started doing video a long time ago, but we didn't do it right. We just didn't know what we were doing. We started off with a GoPro, and then we have a DSLR, but it was just one camera, and it didn't really work well in a podcast environment. And YouTube really wasn't set up for long form content. So we ditched doing video a while ago and just said, well, 90% of our audience is coming through the audio.
Sure.
So let's just focus there, get some more time back where we can kind of refocus on other things there.
Yeah.
We'll be changing that going into 25.
Okay.
This is something that I'll kind of put the cart before the horse here a little bit. We'll be opening up a spot on Whiskey Row in March, April, probably more April timeframe of 2025. And we're going to be having a whole new podcast studio there as well. And by doing that, I want to implement a true 3-camera setup so we can start looking more of putting all of our new episodes that will be on YouTube, and it'll be cleaner, really well done. We've gotten so much better over the years of post-production, who to outsource stuff to, what can we do ourselves. And we're still going to be learning through this process, but the good thing is that the technology has come so far along from when we started. Like, there's just so many good AI tools now that
just talking about that.
It's negated a lot of the work that we did over the years. And we've thankfully, I come from a technology background. I have our podcast publishing pipeline pretty much automated to the point where it's everything's inside of a Google sheet. You fill out everything, you put it to another row in a different sheet, and it'll upload to our hosting provider. It will add the show notes. It will create a WordPress post. It will queue the MailChimp message. It'll do all this sort of stuff. So it just like I said, we've just gotten so far along this path now that we've got it running like a well-oiled machine. We've got our scheduling down from when we have to find new guests to what topics we're going to talk about. We've just got a, which is crazy. We've been doing this 10 years and we still haven't run out of topics. There's a new topic every single week.
I mean, that's your Friday episodes, right? Your Friday episodes are about that, right? What happened the week?
Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
crazy part. We're releasing 3 episodes every single week, and every Thursday is a brand new episode for 10 years. We haven't really had to dig too much into the archives just yet. Maybe we will one day, but not yet.
And then you have what I love, the Behind the Pursuit, which shows you, not to we can maybe transition to the Start the Juice, but where you show the day-to-day activities of trying to, what it takes to build a whiskey brand, right? I mean, that's what that is all about. And it shows you the good, bad, and great of the trials and tribulations of building this brand, correct?
Yeah, that was maybe we don't have enough free time or too much free time. We said, well, let's start a second podcast.
Yeah, right.
But it also just goes back into like, let's focus on our strengths. As a startup whiskey company, we only have so much money. We haven't taken in any outside investment. We took a small financial investment earlier this past year. We still haven't announced who that is yet, and we'll still be waiting to do that. But me and Ryan, we still own 90% of the company. And so with that, when we bootstrapped this whole entire thing, we started the company off with $7,000 a piece with Pursuit Spirits. So $14,000.
That's crazy.
Yeah. And so we bought our first few barrels. We bought some glass. We bought some labels. We put it out there. We took that money. We bought more stuff. We took that money. We bought more stuff. We even to this day, and here we are, 4-6 years later, we have yet to pay ourselves.
So we hear that often. I mean, I don't think you're alone in that. And I mean, we talked with, I don't know if you know who O-Line is, American Single Malts here in Baltimore. Mark and Arch have been around since when? 2000 and it's probably 8 years now, 8-9 years. Never taken a paycheck. They own the 2 guys who own, they're Navy veterans, own the company, have never taken a paycheck. It's amazing what you do. And, let's talk about sort of that transition from when you went from being sort of the kings of bourbon podcast to starting this brand. You mentioned you don't have enough hours in a day. Take us back how that was, because it sounds very similar. We just had Danny Police of Penelope on, who's talking about how they bought 2-3 barrels, and that first blend was awful. It tasted like shit, and in fact, it was infected with some type of chili or something like Tabasco. Yeah, Tabasco. Whoever can find a batch one of Penelope, I really want to try that, because that's got to be a golden nugget right there. And the same thing with but you did so many barrel picks, right? You guys are doing 50 a year at one point. And so you have all this experience, you have all these relationships. Take us through the process of Pursuit Spirits and how that evolved and how you got into that transition from and you're still doing the podcast. So now you have double the amount of work to do. How's that even possible is my question.
Well, you forgot there's also the day jobs we still have between us as well. So
you still have day jobs too.
We still have day jobs. Yeah. We still haven't even we still can't go all in yet. Yeah. When I say we can't pay ourselves, we literally cannot pay ourselves. Yeah. And just to, I mean, I'm totally transparent. Like right now we're at like 40 to 50 grand a month burn rate in regards of what we spend in our not our new fill costs. Those are financed by something else. But I mean, we still pay the insurance and the storage fees every single month for all these barrels. We have facilities. Now we have overhead. We've got people that we're also employing. So all this sort of stuff kind of builds up. So when you're spending 40 to 50 grand a month just in, like burn rate, it adds up pretty quickly. And to kind of just go back to your point of 2018 and sort of like how it blossomed from there. So 2018, got that phone call, said you all can come to our place. It was a barrel broker. Depending on the day, he's got 5,000 barrels in inventory. You can pick and choose what you want. And for anybody that's been on a barrel pick, by far, it was the most epic barrel pick you could ever think. You'd go there and they've got 40 barrels rolled out for you. We would spend 2 days going through these. We would drive down to Memphis. We would spend 3/4 of the day tasting through barrels. We'd take a barbecue lunch. And then we'd go back and, keep tasting. And then this next day we'd go back and we would look at the ones that we earmarked and taste them again, just to make sure that's what we wanted. And we would reject probably 90%.
Yeah, that's
of what
crazy.
was rolled out for us.
That's
Well, I mean,
crazy.
we were very picky.
Picky, right? Yeah.
We had started the barrel pick program. We felt really confident on what good barrels we could pick.
Right.
And that's what we just kind of were beating that drum for a while. And then it was that guy that was also doing bottling for us and letting us pick barrels from his inventory said, guys, this is fun, but this isn't a business. Like, what are you going to do with this? And we got like, yeah, I guess you're right. Because while it's fun to come down here and do stuff, like, we're still not paying ourselves. It's nothing that's like, we would make like an extra like 10 grand, 20 grand a year, maybe, if we kept doing that. But for the most part, it really just didn't make sense. So I started doing what I do best. I put myself into Google spreadsheet mode and really just started hammering away and figuring out, well, what would a business look like? And we started playing around with stuff. We were talking to brokers. We were getting access to more whiskey than we thought was there before, which I feel like what we have done as a part of Bourbon Pursuit is been a good barometer of how educated people are now than probably ever before. When we first started Bourbon Pursuit, and even years into Bourbon Pursuit, the idea that there is a sourced market or a brokered barrel market or all these things are available to anybody with enough money, it was very close.
Yeah.
It was handshake. It was something never really been talked about. And then as soon as we started finding out about it, I mean, we really started telling the world. And I felt like it kind of opened up the doors for a lot of people to start looking behind the curtain and knowing, okay, well, this is how healthy something is. This is what people are paying over here. Wait, where'd this barrel come from? This is a mash bill I've never seen before. Oh, they got it. And I feel like that has become a lot more commonplace now for the hardcore bourbon enthusiast to really track down and kind of know about what happens on the open market. So anyway, now that we started really sharing a lot of that knowledge, we started looking and seeing, well, what's available to us. And back then it was some young stuff from Kentucky. There was a lot of stuff from MGP. And we were just like, well, there's a lot of companies out there that are doing this. It's good stuff, but how are we going to out MGP these other companies that are already doing it? Like, we already had, Penelope was already on the upswing at that point. You had Nashville Barrel Company. You had Smooth Ambler was probably the biggest one at the time. That was
Smoke Wagon. Yeah, keep going. I mean, just keep going.
Yeah. So it's like, how are we going to be any different? And that just kind of goes back into, what you had said at the top of the show is we are continually trying to be different. And that's why the podcast is different. That's why our reviews are different. And that's why our whiskey is different. And we looked at really the only people that were in the space doing something different that doesn't come from a heritage or even a craft distiller was Barrel Bourbon. They're the only ones that were looking at blending American whiskey or blending bourbon and making something that was truly different. And I said, this has got to be the path that we can go down, because we're not starting a distillery. That's never going to happen. I'm not spending $30 million to look at a copper tube and know that 5 years later that we make really shitty whiskey. There's no point in doing that.
No, I got you.
And so I said, well, let's figure out this whole blending thing. And so we were just getting stuff from, our basements and just grabbing, handles of Barton and some MGP and whatever this other kind of stuff. We're just kind of like figuring this stuff out. And Ryan was actually really gifted at it. We would do blend offs all the time, just between the two of us. And I mean, he kicked my ass every single time. Like,
did he say, that he was drinking wine? Andy's a big wine guy. And I guess you said he was drinking a Chardonnay and loved this sort of aspects that he was getting out of that Chardonnay, and said, so he went and found out that that winery's cooperage and who they use for their barrels, and actually found out where they got them. It was French oak staves. And so you said, can we get those same barrels to get that flavor profile to make you different? Is that exactly what happened? I know I kind of butchered that, but
that plays into our double oak product. And that's where that secondary aging kind of came in from there.
Got it. Okay.
So that's still a little bit years down the path from there.
Got ahead there.
But yeah, I mean, like I said, we ended up, I'll fast forward a little bit. So we ended up working directly with Bardstown Bourbon Company. There's another place that's about an hour south of Nashville. And then it's in Columbia, Tennessee. The only ones I can't really put about in the air. But you can Google it. It's not too hard to figure out which one it is. And then Finger Lakes Distilling.
Yeah, Mackenzie.
Yeah. And so we were actually blending a lot of stuff from BBC and this other place in Tennessee a lot. And we're like, this is good, but it just feels expected. Like Kentucky, Tennessee whiskey, like there's just nothing special here.
Yeah.
And thankfully, through those initial barrels that we were buying, we started working directly with some other craft distillers that put the Bourbon Pursuit stamp of approval on it. And Finger Lakes with Mackenzie was one of those. We love their wheated bourbon. I think it's fantastic. And we always say it's just because they're in New York. Everybody puts their blinders on and thinks that they're not going to drink New York bourbon. So anyway, it ended up being, like I said, a true blessing to work with all three of these people. And that's kind of how the United concept, the United project was born. Was actually blending all this together in my basement with Ryan. And we're like, I think we have something here. Let's buy 10 barrels and let's put out a batch and see what happens. And it sold out in about 30 days. And we said, all right, here we go. Let's figure this out.
Those first batches, was it mainly your Patreon, your audience that really latched onto them, and then it just spread from there once people found, Bourbon Pursuit's doing their own stuff, and it kind of grew that way? I mean, that first few batches, was it all your sort of, your converteds already? Is my question, or was it, did you find it? Yeah, okay,
yeah. I mean, you got to understand, like 10 barrels is going to get you 2,000 bottles, right? So
that's true.
as much as 2,000, as much as I'd like to pat myself on the back and think like, 2,000 people love me, they'll buy whatever I put out. The reality is that's not true. And so it took, getting the first few bottles out to other influencers or whomever to kind of talk about it, because we definitely relied on people. We're in a very different position than a lot of people. Most people that are going to come out with a brand, and whether you're on the influencer side or whether you've just come from stacks of cash, you're relying on probably a few different things. One, you're relying on high proof, because people are cask strength chasers. They want high age statements is the other one. High age, high proof. It's always going to win. That's why you see, for the life of me, light whiskey that's 13 years old and 130 proof, people chase after it. And I'm kind of like, you guys know that's not bourbon, right? But you still chase after it because you think you want something that'll burn your esophagus. That aside. Or it's, it's weeded, or it's something like they're pulling it from a heritage distiller. Or it's like, like this is 9-year like bookers that just didn't make it. And like, okay, don't give me that shit, right? It's not 9 years bookers that didn't make it. It's because they were selling off barrels from a broker that, they just had extra of. So you see it. That's maybe it's like one of the things that irks me in this world is that people they lean heavily on those three pillars instead of really focusing on, like, can you create something that's really good without having to rely on those three as a crutch? Because I see that happening way too much in this world. It's like, well, it's 10 years, it's got to be good, or it's hazmat, like I gotta buy it. And it's like you just have that, people have that draw to it. And so I felt like, and even to this day, like we are at a disadvantage. Like we have to win people over because they'll see that it's a 4 to 6 year old blended bourbon from some tater podcasters. It has nothing that most whiskey geeks give a shit about.
Right.
So it's been time after time of like trying to win people over. It's like, just try it, put in a blind, and you see people put them in blinds and it kills well. It beats Weller Foolproof. It beats all the stuff that comes from heritage distilleries. And so it's just it's a slow burn when it comes to winning over the whiskey geeks. But I guess that's the good part about it. It's like we didn't have the money to go and buy a bunch of high age, high proof stuff. And B, it didn't exist. So we had to really start from a completely different angle where we had to really focus on creating something that's truly unique and different in ours. If I go and I buy a bunch of 8-year bean barrels, that's not mine. I didn't make that mine. And if I put it in a port cask, it's still not mine. It just is finished in something, right? I just feel that like it's like I feel like we truly created something that's original and unique and is not like anything else on the shelf.
Yeah.
And so we haven't had to rely on those crutches. And so that's one of the things that it's been very hard from a business perspective to kind of find that ramp. But thankfully now that with the 2 bottles that you have sitting in front of you, our double oak has kind of taken off like a hockey stick. And that's really what I mean. And maybe it's just marketing at the end of the day because people love the term double oak, but that is something that I feel is I'm very confident in our future. And
are you a marketer or are you a whiskey producer? That's the question.
Yeah,
right?
there we go.
That's the question.
Yeah,
So maybe a little of both. I don't know. I mean, I don't know.
The market is changing though, and I think the whiskey drinker today is changing too. And I think you're hitting the wave at a good time.
Yeah.
Because for the longest time, you're right. People were chasing proofs. They were chasing age. They were chasing.
As we have a 150 proof single barrel pick from Corbin Cash coming out.
Yeah.
In 2 weeks.
But here's the thing. From Corbin Cash. Corbin Cash is a distiller that nobody knows about.
Have you ever heard of Corbin?
Water,
Kenny, you've heard of Corbin Cash, right?
I have.
You know,
so
Yep,
I mean, have you had a lot of their stuff?
They sent us some stuff a while ago. I think I haven't had it in about a year, but I know there's a bottle sitting around here somewhere.
Oh man, we're big fans. So,
but the point is that I think that you're seeing in whiskey what you saw in craft beer a while ago. And InBev for the longest time was the only player in the game, and then all of a sudden, craft breweries started to grow, and you started to see different offerings. And now it's becoming cool again to be a craft whiskey distiller, and for people who can find it and do it right and blend correctly, that's something that people are chasing. It's like it's best man available instead of let's chase just a high draft pick. Like we want the right person, right spot, regardless of what that is.
Well, speaking of that, I mean, you mentioned you don't consider yourself, someone who you don't source whiskey, right? You have contracts with and proprietary mash bills with these partners, right? You don't source whiskey. You're not going to a broker and buying blindly all these. You have your own mash bills with these partners that you bring in to create your own profile, correct? That's how you're doing it.
So they're not proprietary mash bills. So here's the thing. Back to spreadsheets. I love reducing risk.
Yeah, let's go.
And when we started this project, we were getting 4 to 5 year old barrels from our partners, and we were like, "This is great." And what do you do when you have something great? Don't fuck it up. So let's just keep doing what is really good over here. And I remember talking to Bardstown. I do remember this because we actually contracted out. We have, I think 25, 35 barrels over at Willett or something like that. I remember talking to Drew. He's like, "Hey, you want to change the percentage on this one or this one?" I'm like, "No, like we don't the hell we're doing."
Yeah,
like,
right. Yeah.
Don't break. Yeah. Don't try to, fix what is broke or not broken. And so even when we started talking to everybody else of trying to figure out, well, what other, barrels we're going to put down, everything like that. And it's like, okay, well, we love this mash bill, stick with this mash bill. But over time, what we have started changing is we are looking at the influence of the wood. So like all of our barrels that we get from Bardstown, we've changed them from their standard 3 to 6 month outdoor life cycle. What am I thinking of? Seasoning, outdoor stave seasoning. We now use what's called Cooper Select. They're now 18-month air dried staves. This is something that thankfully through the podcast, knowing Andrew Weebrink over at Independent Stave, we had the chance to actually go and try that whiskey, the same exact whiskey in 3 different barrels from the 3 to 6 month, the 18-month, and the 36-month. And 18-month was just great. And by doing that, we see exactly not only does the stave seasoning change, but what else can we change? So we actually changed a lot of stuff going into char 1 instead of char 3 and char 4, just because there's less that it has to push through the char to actually get to the wood fiber. So it's pulling out a lot of flavor at a much younger age. So we're changing a lot of things just on the wood side to make sure that we have a better product in the long term, because as a small young startup, we can't wait 8 to 15 years for the whiskey geeks to finally pay attention to us. Like we have to make astounding whiskey at a 4 to 6 year range for quite some time, at least until 2028, 2030, when I think we're going to be with at least all 6 years in our blends.
Okay. Wow. That's great.
Yeah. But I mean, like I said, we've planned this already out to like 2032. So the good thing is that we have our roadmap set in front of us. We have the Northern Star that we're shooting towards, and now we just have to keep executing on it.
One of our questions. So, guys, in the chat, if you have questions for Kenny, we'll be certainly try to get to them all. And, we live 8 miles from Sagamore, right? So we're big fans. We were huge, proponents of Brian Tracy when he was there. And so, and we still love what they do. Joe Graves asks about, the Maryland Straight Rye Whiskey series that you guys do, and sort of that, collaboration you have. We see a lot of that Maryland whiskey in some of these blends now, correct?
Yeah. So that was, and hats off to BT as well, right? So
yeah, right.
Here's kind
what
of
a great guy, right? Is he an amazing guy or what? Huh?
Well, I'll tell you, we didn't really like him at first. No,
No,
we actually had a really good relationship. Here's kind of how it all went down. So anybody who doesn't know, we were the first people to actually contract and work directly with Sagamore. When we released our first edition of United Bourbon, we said, all right, we're a whiskey company. We got to do rye whiskey as well. And we said, all right, well, let's go and figure out who's making really good rye whiskey. We already worked with Bardstown. We asked them, they're like, yes, we have rye whiskey. Okay, checkbox. We got some Kentucky rye. Who else can we work with? Obviously, you look around on the open market, there's nothing but MGP for days. And we said, okay, well, what else? What else is there? And that's when somebody at Bardstown said, you should contact the folks at Sagamore. I think some of their stuff's getting ready to turn 4. And Ryan had worked down. Ryan is a honorary member, or maybe actually he technically is a member of the Dallas Bourbon Club, actually out of Dallas. And through an event, he ended up talking to one of the reps that works for Sagamore down there. And so he messaged him and says, hey, can you get me in touch with somebody at Sagamore? I'd love to talk about this opportunity. Ends up getting in touch with BT, Brian Tracy over there. And they talk, and, Ryan kind of pitches Brian and says, this is the concept. We're going to, buy your aged whiskey, blend it as a part of our product, come out with our own offering called United. You're a part of this, like you're a member of the brand. We're very transparent on everything too. And Brian was like, I don't know. So you're going to buy my whiskey and then compete against me? And so it took a lot of convincing to kind of show Brian. It's like, no. Like you're a part of the story. Like everybody, like we will tell that it, like Sagamore is a part of this. Like it's going to be on the label. And by doing that, I think not only did he see the value, that the same thing that Bardstown saw the value in, with transparency and be able to talk about, there's a component.
Careful, you got to learn.
Hey, I love BT. Always chiming in. He's always like a fly on the wall. But just kind of showing it's like, it's a component in here, and as a part of that, we elevate your brand and your story too. And not only that is, when you write them a check for $250,000 for doing a bunch of barrels, it's like, okay, now like I can see we got spare cycles here, so we could probably do that too.
Let me be honest with you. Brian is the nicest guy in the entire industry, hands down, Brian Tracy. But he's a good businessman.
Yeah, sure.
So don't let the smile fool you. He's going to make sure that he does business right, and that when he puts his name on something, he's going to stamp it. He's going to believe in it, and he's going to back it. So you must have done something right if you got Brian's seal of approval. So this double oaked rye that we're drinking here, and we've got a bunch of our Patreon said, Derek H said, tell Kenny, that thank you for the double oaked rye. Like this Kenny is in my top, definitely top 10, maybe even 5 ryes. I don't put single barrels in my top lists, and I don't get a lot of high end stuff. This is a easily attainable. Well, not really, actually. On sealbacks, at least, if you get there right, you can get it. Talk to us about this double oaked rye. This has Kentucky and Maryland juice in it. So we're gonna flip the switch here.
I think so, because I'm drinking rye right now. Because we're drinking rye. It's always
what he does.
That's what I want to do.
My God.
Tell us about this, because I think people really are starting to open their eyes to this double oaked rye and how amazing it is. I love it. I mean, honestly, and I'm ashamed to say it, it's the first time I've drank your rye. And it blew me away this year. I don't know what I've been doing for the last 4 years. I'm sorry, Kenny. I apologize. We started this channel as a beer channel. We were homebrewers. That's how this channel started. We were homebrewing beer for 5 years and got sick of each other brewing the same shit over and over again. And there's only so much homebrewing content you can do. We started drinking barrel-aged beers, and we loved the barrel. Like, we wanted to know why we loved them so much. It was the whiskey, and it was a slippery slope. My point being, I love this rye. What makes it so good?
Well, first off, they call brewers quitters because they don't actually go all the way and distill it, right? So
That's right.
that's reasonable.
Whatever. Well, my wife would say you're going to blow up her house. I've already had blow off tubes, fermenting beer, blow up in my basement. If I'm trying to distill something, she'd probably divorce me, but that's okay. Go ahead.
Yeah, for sure. Sure. I'll talk a little about the double oak rye as well. So, and also just to kind of talk about sort of the blending process behind it too. And I talked about, us building up Sagamore, but it's also helped in reverse too, because when people find out that we have partnered with Sagamore as a part of this, people are like, oh, well, I love Sagamore. The good thing that I get to say about this is that at least today, or should you say, it was not as common as it was today. But I mean, a couple of years ago when we came out with United Rye, I could say, listen, like this is actual Sagamore distillate. You can go pick up a bottle of Sagamore and you can turn it around, and it probably says distilled in Indiana on it. Now they've started switching that over, and you'll start seeing pretty much everything that says distilled in Maryland or it says distilled in Indiana, Maryland, as they're kind of phasing it out. But knowing that we were coming up with this blend, and we had actually sent a lot of the samples back to BT and the team there. They loved it, and they were like, well, what would you do differently? And we really loved one of their particular mash bills, which is their 52-43-5. So they're barely legal rye, 52% rye, 43% corn. And by going really heavy with that one, we bring a different aspect that we really call a bourbon drinker's rye, because it doesn't have those notes of dill and mint and huge rye spice that most people are accustomed to. So that was sort of like the kickoff to United Rye. And, United Rye has won double gold at San Francisco 2-3 years in a row, something like that. It's a phenomenal rye whiskey. And then when we had launched, it always seems we launch with bourbon and then we do rye second, but we did our double oak bourbon that took off, and we said, well, let's do a double oaked rye. And this one was, and everything we do is through series and series of yeah, there you go.
Yes, that's right. That's right. That's right. They just released that this year. Yeah.
Funny story about this one too, about BT, now that he says it. I do remember he told us, he was like, you all cannot release our rye whiskey until we do it. And we're like, okay, well, how much longer we have to wait?
That was 3 years ago, I guess they did it, right?
They had done a
5-year bottle and bond.
It was a 4-year bottle and bond that they released directly at the distillery. And as soon as they did that, we're like, all right, we're off to the races.
The next day, we're out.
Thankfully, we were pretty much all on track at the same exact time, which was perfect.
That's great. It stressed them out. That's hilarious, Brian.
But through all of our double oak experiments, I mean, it's probably through 40 or 50 different oak experiments of trying to figure out how our whiskey works best with the oak. And this one, I couldn't even tell you, this is where Ryan really shines. It's another French oak varietal that goes into this particular rye whiskey. But we'll go through, we'll make a United Rye blend. We add the stave finishing to the tanks, let it sit somewhere between 6 to 12 weeks, however long it takes. But really what this does is that it just really brings a more robust, deeper oak flavor to the whiskey. And this one truly feels more like a traditional double oaked type of variant. It just is, like I said, it kind of just has those like I said, those deeper, robuster notes that you would expect to find in a double oak product.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I also, flavor profile. I mean, I get baking spices. You're right. I get like vanilla bean off of this. There is baking spices. Dark. I get like a chocolate sauce. I mean,
can you pull out Todd's the king of describing whiskey?
No, I'm saving that. I have that for the
I
bourbon.
just want to know.
I haven't got a dessert for this one, but I will say it's better than the Sagamore double oak. I can tell you that right now. I'm just saying.
Okay. Sorry, he doesn't work there anymore. He doesn't have to. You don't have to hurt his feelings.
I'm not lying there. It's so good. I'm a rye guy. I love this. I mean, I love bourbon too. Don't get me wrong. I don't discriminate, but it's almost gone, and I love this. And so, how often does this come out? So I know it's. So if you want to, so where, first of all, where are you distributed? If you're not in the Silbacks or shared pour realm, where are you going to find Pursuit bottles on the shelves?
Yeah, so our current distribution is gonna be a little bit all over the place for all of our products. Like, so we have our core, what we call our core four, right? We have our United Bourbon, United Rye, which we're gonna start rebranding and calling our Triple Mash Bourbon and Triple Mash Rye. We can dive into that a little bit later. Then we have our Toasted Bourbon, which we're gonna call Twice Toasted, and then our Sherry Revere finished rye. So those core 4 are in Kentucky, Tennessee, Georgia, Illinois, Texas, Ohio, Missouri, New Mexico.
What's up, Brian?
And you can go to pursuitspirits.com. We have them all on there as well. Up north in Maryland and Delaware as well, and DC. Yep. So there we go. I think I'm hitting on all of them there. But make sure you check out Pursuit Spirits for that.
I mean, the easiest way is to go to Sealbacks, right? I mean, you are pretty well. I mean, a batch of this is going to probably hit Sealbacks how often a year? The Oaked Rye.
Here's the funny thing. We had just sent 40 cases 2 weeks ago, and they're already sold out.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah,
very quick. So it went quick, which makes you feel good. But now we just got to do another batch, and we've got another batch brewing already on the other side of this warehouse over here. So it really just goes to figure out. And by the way, this is probably a good PSA for anybody that's out there too. I had mentioned the states and all that sort of stuff. Our distributors don't want to bring on new products. So even though that we're in those states, like we don't have double oak bourbon or double oak rye in some of those states, and that's because people aren't asking for it. And I'm not going to go and push our distributors to say like, hey, you need to go and literally had this conversation with somebody else the other day. And I was like, we've got to get double oak bourbon across the shelves. Like people are asking for it. And they're like, everybody says that. I'm like, okay, fine. So, I was just like, well, then you're not getting anything until somebody says it. And so that's the hard part about this business. So it's like, if you want double oak bourbon and double oak rye or anything else like that on the shelves near you, like you've got to ask your retail stores, they've got to ask distributors to be able to bring it on. And Georgia was the first state that happened in. And as soon as people started asking about it, Georgia put in the first purchase order for 100 cases of double oak bourbon. And they were also the first state besides Sealbox that got the first picks of double oak rye.
And Brian from Seal, we love him. He's saying we'll have the double oak bourbon and rye pick heading that way soon. So that's maybe we can move while he's here to this wonderful double oak bourbon Sealbacks blend that I was lucky enough to grab.
I'm gonna finish this first because you're flying.
We've got someone from Brian, Abandoned Bourbon from Sealbacks is in the chat. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more. Tell us a little about this. So you have the double oak. You mentioned double oak bourbon that sort of took off, but this is sort of a little bit more special because it's a small batch blend that I guess Blake and maybe Brian, I don't know who was involved in.
Brian's gonna take all the credit for this one.
Oh, is he? Okay, maybe he will.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Oh, he definitely will.
Because I love this is amazing blend as well. Tell us a little about this one.
Well, the good thing is, so Brian works here at Pursuit HQ. So
he's there too. Sealbacks too. He's everywhere.
So the Sealbox remote office is actually here at Pursuit HQ. So that's what I love about it. Brian gets an inside scope into literally everything, and he has and so he gets to play around with everything that we're doing. And I believe it was when him and Blake was here doing it, and Blake was going to pick a barrel, and they were going back and forth between another one. And I think Brian was just like, here, let's just blend these together and see what happens. And they're like, yep, this is magic. This is what we're going to go with. And I remember Blake going, can we do this? And we're like, nobody else has asked for it before. Yeah. Hell, why not? Let's run with it. Let's see what happens.
That's awesome.
I do love the rye, but that bourbon.
Yeah, you mentioned to me when we were drinking.
I love that bourbon. I was really impressed because it's been a long time since I feel like I've had something that spoke to just an old school damn good bourbon that pulls out all the flavors that you want when you're sitting down and having a pour after a long day. I mean, this had, and I love the proof point. I believe between that,
they're all,
when you get in there around that, 100 to 110 proof point, those are great points and proofs too, for just enjoying a glass of whiskey. This though is one of the best bourbons I've had in a really, really long time. I was blown away.
So it's called the Sweet Tobacco Bourbon. Kenny, tell us, a little bit more about this. How many barrels were in this blend? Did you mention? I'm sorry if you said
there was 2 barrels.
Okay.
So this is part of our PUPS program, or the Pursuit United Private Select program. The interesting about this is, what you're holding there is, I hate using the word unicorn. It's really not a unicorn. I'll call it a snowflake.
It's freaking amazing.
I call it a snowflake.
I humble myself in thinking that we're definitely not unicorn status, but as a part of the Pursuit United Private program.
God, that's good.
We'll do multiple blends of bourbons, and so we'll say we'll put a batch together that's maybe 3 barrels, or put a batch together that's 8 barrels, and we'll put that together, and then we'll go and refill some of the X barrels that it came from. So we're putting them back into either rye bourbon or wheated bourbon barrels. These are coming from Independence Stave or Kelvin Cooperage. And so at this point, you're already looking at a myriad of variables of the different types of blend, the different types of whiskey that was in there, plus the different aging casks. So you have, again, all these different variables. And then we have about 12 or 14 different oak stave finishes that we add to the barrel. So as a part of barrel inserts. So now we have yet another, again, a slew of different variables. So no matter what, we can never recreate a barrel or a blend or a type of whiskey ever again. They're all going to have variable differences just because of those different levers that we can pull for flavor.
I love that.
I call this, and this is my tasting notes only.
Let's do it. What's in a glass?
It's a Heath bar in a glass. I think this is like a Heath bar in a glass. Toffee, caramel, chocolate. It's just amazingly sweet and spicy. I love everything about this blend. And again, it's in my top 10 of the year for bourbons. I don't know if a lot of people have had it. I don't care. It's that good. And I'm glad you like it as well.
Thanks for your approval.
That's all I'm saying.
I appreciate it. No, that's good.
There you go. That's my. Has anybody in the chat had that? I mean, I know you say it was only 2 barrels, so there wasn't a lot. I know I was just looking for something double oaked and it popped up on Silver, and I grabbed it very quickly. We're members of them, so we get that little early access. So it was great to have. And I'd only have about a third of it left now. So I guess we'll just finish that one off and they'll be gone.
We'll finish it off. I've had like 3 sips of this, and look at what Todd's done to the bottle. This is like,
I love it. Anyway,
I don't have a problem with that at all. Yeah, and that's what I know. Mike's in the chat talking about like the Werther's original and all this.
Yeah, there you go.
Stuff. So we have our like Kenny and Ryan's version of United Double Oak that we put out. That was that 36-month air drive French oak from that buttery Chardonnay that is kind of putting off those crazy Werther's original kind of flavors. And so that's our standard offering of Pursuit United that we put out. And so there's 50 cases of that are currently heading to Sealbox. There's also 75 cases headed to Georgia. I think 35 cases headed to Missouri.
Not Maryland, huh?
Put in the purchase order.
Yeah, well, there was a question. Robert Hayes, who's in a controlled state like Virginia, how would one actually put in a controlled state like Virginia? How would they do that?
So that kind of just goes into a longer discussion of sorry about that. A longer discussion of where is our next sort of distribution footprint and where we're going.
Okay.
And to be fair, I'll give you kind of the roadmap of what I'm seeing. I've kind of laid this out for our ambassadors that are part of Pursuit Spirits and some of our employees and stuff like this. I'm going to do my best to not extend our distribution footprint as far as we can, because every time we do that, that's more relationships, more time we have to spend, more money we have to spend, more ambassadors we have to build up. It is painstaking of how much effort that just goes into distribution. So my goal over the span of 2025 is to start building basing it off of like the wine club that you would see in, when you go to Napa.
Yep.
Nobody in bourbon has done it well yet, of actually having a subscription service that you get access to distillery only offerings that don't go out anywhere else. And so that's really what we want to build, is like, let's find something that people want access to this stuff. Let's give them access, but not have to fight through the 3-tier distribution system. Like, let's see if we can, let's bake in all the costs for shipping so it doesn't feel like you're spending an arm and a leg. Let's kind of like figure out a way to make this look well and do it right, but not having to feel that, like, oh, I can't get my hands on something. Like, let's. And so I'm talking.
So how would that look? How would that look? So is that going to go through your Patreon? Is that
no? This is a completely different thing. So think of, we're still kind of figuring this out right now. Okay. So think of like, if it's a subscription service, think you're spending like $500 a year, and you'll have 4 or 5 or 6 bottles, whatever it is, on a month or a quarterly or a biannual basis, and you'll have a chance to get a distillery only offering of what we do only at the distillery, plus your choice of one of the like 6 or 7 or 8 or how many core offerings that we have. And so you have a chance to like replenish what you can, what that's available, and B, you get something that's a distillery only thing. I've also toyed with the idea of doing sort of like an offering where maybe we don't build up their subscription model, but instead we get a distribution list of 5,000 people. And depending on how much you spend, you get higher in the ranks, and you now have, let's say we have 20 different bottles that are available, or 20 different barrels, or whatever it is, and it has descriptions. It's like, okay, you want 1 of this one, 2 of this one, 5 of this one,
Right.
whatever it is. And you kind of just build it out that way. So we're kind of going back and forth between, do we go the model of, well, I send 2 bottles to a person either on a quarterly or a biannual basis, or do we give these people an opportunity to buy 10 bottles at once if they really want to?
Yeah.
So we're kind of playing.
So you
with
would
that
send
idea.
it though. It's not the sort of old Carter. I hate to use old Carter because we know what's going on with old Carter, but that model of their club where you had to go to their shop in Louisville to actually pick up your bottles.
No, I'm not doing that. Like
Okay.
And so here, like Mark, and they had a great idea with everything with the locker club, and
Right.
funny enough, we have about 60 lockers sitting here that I purchased in our warehouse, thinking that we were going to build a locker club at our downtown location. And I said, I was like, why are we going to spend all this time for 60 people? Like, I don't want 60, like I want 6,000.
Yeah, right.
And so like, if we can get to the point where it's like, yeah, we can get a couple thousand people, like that's the best way that you can give a great customer experience and not have to feel that, you're shortchanging somebody. It's like you get access to this, and all you have to do is just sign up. Like,
so like, yeah, Christopher David says, so like Barrel King has that sort of same kind of, I guess, subscription where I guess they're sending you everything though. It's not just, they're sending you every, I mean, I think Barrel King, you get everything that comes out from them. It's almost too much. Like, you don't want to do that. You don't want to flood them, right? I mean, the idea you mentioned is how you're still, I guess, figuring out what that would look.
The tiered system.
I know that's for me. I've talked to Chris about this. He's part of the Barrel King Club. We're not, but he's like, I can't keep up. I'm getting too much. I'm like, I'm getting too many bottles now. I can't keep up. I can't drink all this.
Yeah,
that's the other issue.
And that's what it's. You have to play a balancing game of that and trying to figure out. And that's, I mean, personally for me too, it's like we got to figure out, like, is 2 bottles per quarter too much? Is it 2 bottles per 6 months? Isn't that enough?
Right.
And
I know people are going to be just
that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not like wine. You got to drink it in 2 sittings.
Right.
Speaking of which, would you do
6
one where Ryan compare a Napa cab with each release? As a wine
can
guy,
do way more than just that.
wine. Come on now, I'm excited by that.
Come on, Ryan. Come on, Ryan. You can do it.
Yeah, we can do more than that. So we're still figuring this out. Like I said, I think this is something that just hasn't been done well yet inside the whiskey world. And so we're trying to work and try to figure out, who's a good partner that we can work on the fulfillment side. Unfortunately, we will still not get the same rights and access that wineries do today to help do their clubs, because they can collect all the margin because they're doing the shipping, they're doing everything, getting out to market. Unfortunately for us,
they're also marking it up at a ridiculous rate that whiskey can't do. So the markup of wine is insane.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And so, like I said, and then we'll also have to have a third party company that has to import it, take it, box it up, put it out to, whomever. So there's still a lot of TBD there, but that is one of my biggest goals for 2025 is to get that going.
Yeah, I mean, Anthony Peters mentions the Baltimore Spirits Company has a club where it's a bottle a quarter. He said that's a perfect amount. So one every. That's, I don't know. Again, it's to each his own.
To each own.
Yeah. One of the questions. Yeah.
But when I think of that, and Anthony, thank you for saying that. But when I think of the amount of money that you're paying as a customer, if I'm shipping 1 bottle or if I'm shipping 2 bottles, the amount I'm paying in shipping really isn't that much of a difference. So most people would probably rather have an extra bottle in there just to make
correct.
Because if you're going to pay $20 for shipping and you can fit 1 bottle or 2, then you reduce your cost down of what you're paying per bottle at that point.
So Morgan has a great question. And I know this is probably the answer. I mean, the issue is the bottling, like getting bottles that are 200 milliliter, like the smaller bottles. We all have this problem. We have floor whiskey, right? So you can't drink all the whiskey you're getting, but you'd love to try it. Do you guys even think about that concept of doing smaller bottling?
So Yes and no. I'll kind of talk about this. So from our United perspective and our United product line, I'll kind of tease a few things out too. So we will be going through a packaging change going into next year. So you'll all hear it first before we ever put out a press release or share pictures or anything like that. So
look at that.
New glass, new labels, everything like that. We'll also be going to a smaller form factor, reducing to 700 mLs, but we'll also be reducing the price with it as well. So it's not shrinkflation. Don't say that. So we're actually reducing the price on our core lineup. And then we'll also be reducing, sorry, not reducing, but we'll be releasing more expressions when it comes to a lower proof point, as well as a higher proof point with barrel proof. Now, we have not toyed with the idea of doing smaller form factors with United line. And that's just because of the amount of time and effort that it takes. We do not have an automated line. We don't have, it would just increase the amount of work, double it, triple it of what it has to do smaller bottles. So not doing that at this time. But somebody had just talked about the Melwood line.
Yes.
So that is something that we are going to be doing and moving into 375s. So
okay, there you go.
To give you for anybody that doesn't know about the Melwood line and sort of what this is going to look like, where I'm sitting right now and where Pursuit HQ is the home of the former Melwood distillery, which was this whole entire city block of where we're at. This is kind of revered as a bunch of history. It was pre-prohibition, started in 1895. This is actually where George Garvin Brown used to buy his whiskey to be blended and bottled with two other distilleries as Old Forester.
That's great.
Like even Old Forester was an NDP. They didn't actually make their own whiskey for a very, very long time. So, when we found out all this history, shout out to Brian Hara and all the other kind of just places that old Chuck Cowdery. I mean, there's just so many people that had a ton of information about this place a long time ago. So once I started digging into the history, finding out more about Melwood, when Melwood went under during Prohibition, it came back in 1935 and 1937 as General Distillers. And when I told this story to one of our other fellow Patreon members, he just fell in love with it. And he ended up going on eBay and finding everything of Melwood and General Distillers that was available, and ended up gifting us some of the original old labels that came out of here, a pre-prohibition empty pint glass, some newspaper clippings, some postcards and stuff like that. And I don't know, I guess it kind of struck a heartstring with me. And I said, this is kind of what we've been missing in our product line is a way, because now that we're years into it. When we first started this, we didn't have the opportunity that other people do, where you can just go buy 15-year bourbon that just happens to be available. Like that didn't exist when we were there. And now that you have 6, 8, 10, 12-year bourbon that all of a sudden is becoming available, we're like, well, we don't really have a product line for this. Well, now we do. And so we're looking at, and it's already been approved by the TTB. So if you're scouring, you can go look at it. So we already have some
whiskey.
Yeah, we already have some pre-approved labels for our Melwood line, which is going to be looking at a lot of the historic labels that came out of here, but we're putting our own kind of Pursuit Spirits twist on it. And a lot of these will be cask strength or not single barrels, but they will be cask strength releases of whatever we can just find that looks interesting we can get our hands on. The Melwood was traditionally bottled and bond, so it'll be our first bottled and bond product. It's a 6th year that we're working with as well. And it was just a series of good conversations that we've had, and I'm glad people are being receptive to it as well. A, I think vintage is fun. B, we're putting it in those 375s, and we're doing, and this is what I love about what we're doing, about being different and being authentic and being unique, is that we're not just getting an old label and, slapping it on a wine bottle and charging $400 for it. It blows my mind how many people go and just buy shit that they have no idea about because it has hype behind it. And it's like, ours is done with serious intention. And that's really what I'm going for. It's like the whole design and the package, like it's really meant to be a modernized version of what a retro flask style bottle was. And hopefully, I can't wait for these to come out. We're probably looking at the very beginning of next year, probably in January timeframe when we'll roll
Will it
these
make
out.
it to Steelback? Will it be on Steelbacks at all? Or
Some
no?
people would mention that. No,
Yeah, no? Okay.
we'll figure out in due time. I don't have we
Okay.
only have, I
Okay.
think, like
Yeah.
15
Get it.
barrels that are sitting over here that we're allocating to this.
Is that
particular
distillery
program.
only? It'll be in distillery. That's where
Yeah,
you'll find that?
distillery
Yeah.
only.
Okay.
And like I said, I'm not counting Seal Box out by any means. I mean, it might make it there, but for right now, we'll see what the
Got it.
reception is. And if it's like, if we can't hang on to it, then we have to keep it distillery
go.
only. But if we can move it to Seal Box to help get some more eyeballs on it, then absolutely.
So here we go. We have to transition. I'm sorry because they've been asking.
Kenny,
Since
yep.
we're beer, bourbon, and rock and
That's
roll
true.
here. Joseph, it's been an hour. Can we get a rock and roll question? Guns N' Roses or Def Leppard?
Oh.
This is a very careful question for
question.
the answer. This
He might say neither.
Okay, so this is for me.
Yeah.
is for you.
I guess since you're wearing a Def Leppard shirt, I'll go Guns N' Roses.
That's a perfect answer, Kenny. That's a perfect answer. Well done. Yes.
It's a terrible answer. I'm not gonna lie to you. That's okay. That's okay.
That is a trick.
No copyright infringements on our logo or anything. No, that's fine.
Oh, man, that was great. I love that answer. That's great. My question outside. So, what do you outside of whiskey? Because we know you as Kenny from Pursuit, United and Bourbon Pursuit. What do you like to do outside of whiskey? What to help us understand? Your family. I don't want to get too involved, but what are your interests outside of whiskey? What do you like to do? Like, I love sports. I love baseball. I love football. What do you like?
Oh man, we can take this in a few different directions. So it is, my wife would say that I've become like whiskey defines my personality. So
Yeah, right.
Everything we do,
I know.
our conversations, our job, even like our times going out, it's based upon
Kenny's a
doing
Swiftie.
whiskey
Uh-oh.
events or
Kenny,
something
you're a
like
Swiftie.
that.
You're a Swiftie, by the way.
Yeah, I love Swiftie.
Our
I love
chat is
Swift. And that's because my daughter became a Swiftie, and so
same thing as him.
So as a way to kind of connect and be a part of it, I kind of want to join in with it. And
All
as you
right.
get into it more, you're just like like the culture and everything about that. Like I don't know, I love about that. I know you're big into rock and roll over here.
Yes.
Well, there's a really good program called Crossroads where Taylor Swift and Def Leppard shared the stage and shared each other's songs. You may want to check that out.
He is the
Came out
biggest Def
about
Leppard
10
fan
years.
in
It's
North
very good.
America. He has been to probably 100 concerts. You haven't met them yet, which is kind of crazy that you haven't. But look at our logo.
Yeah.
It's our 21090 is our zip code 21090. We're not very smart, Kenny. We're not very smart. That's where we live.
We all need help with the marketing department.
Right. So, and then we said, we like Def Leppard's font, so let's just use that. So if we ever get a cease and desist letter from,
they don't control the font. We're fine.
They don't control
We're-
the font.
we're
Okay.
okay.
There you go. But anyway, you didn't answer the question. So outside of bourbon, what are your interests besides Taylor Swift?
Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I'm a big tinkerer. I love to fix things. I love finding projects that, you would just be like, I mean, heck, even like today, I'm sitting here like, it's like, okay, our floor cleaner's not working properly. Like, let me read the manual. Let me figure these stuff out. Like, it's like, I have to figure these things out. Like, I'm still an engineer at heart. So I like figuring these things out. I was big into home automation at one point where, as soon as you come into our house and you roll up the driveway rolls up, the door unlocks, the lights turn on to a certain percentage, and it sets the AC at a certain way and stuff like that too. There's definitely things that I've gravitated towards. I was big into smoking meats at some point, but now it feels like my wife doesn't like me to do it anymore because she's not a big fan of brisket, and you just can't make a small brisket. So there's brisket for one for like a year when you do that.
Yeah. Oh no.
Yeah. But
they know all of our questions. Like they're swiping.
They know all of our
Patrons
questions.
know so
I've seen Kenny been asked this question, what's your go-to bourbon? And I agree. I loved your answer to that because I don't have a go-to bourbon either. Like you mentioned, I don't have a go-to bourbon. It's whatever mood I feel like.
Let Kenny answer the question.
No, but I think the question is, if you're not drinking sort of Pursuit, what are some other brands that you really like that you gravitate to?
I like that. That's a better way to frame it because most people, you're right. People come here all the time. They're like, hey, what's your favorite bourbon? What's your go-to?
Yeah, I don't have a go-to. Do you?
I go to Pursuit is what my
good answer. That's a good answer.
Never mind.
Perfect
I changed my answer back to Def Leppard.
No, screw you. I was lying about that. It's not Pursuit. Forget it.
That's good.
Yeah, because that's exactly what most people come and they're like, what's your go-to? And it's like, I guess I've been spoiled to the point where, most of us, we have 100 bottles open and you'll just look at the sea of them and you'll go, and I think that's the great thing about the time that we live in right now is that we have so much accessibility to other stuff is that we can drink a varied amount of different things. So if you want something sweet or you want something malty or want something chocolatey or dessert like or berry or whatever it is, it's like all you do is you taste it and you know what it is and you kind of just figure out what you want. It's like, did I just get done with a Bordeaux for dinner and I want to kind of switch to this, or did I just get done eating like some spicy Mexican and I want something like this? And so that's the way it's been. For me, when I think of like what brands are doing good things right now, there's a few that I kind of look at have kind of like been influential in what they're doing, and I think that they're making really great products. And it's not from any of the heritage distilleries. I mean, I look at Still Austin. I think they do a fantastic, amazing job. Of course, Frey Ranch. They
got a single barrel pick from them. First rye ever outside the state of Texas. We did, and that's my naked ass on a bottle there, Kenny, for our single barrel.
Fantastic! Yeah,
and it's fantastic.
Give me the. Oh, there we go. I was going to say. I was like, make sure you.
Yeah, there it is. That's me.
I like the sticker.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's and there's Joe Flacco right there. If you didn't know who that is, the greatest quarterback of all time. He's also on the sticker.
Jesus. Anyway, we're gonna.
I see Butthead on there too.
Speaking of single barrels,
we did a nice little
pour some awesome. Yes, we've got Corbin Cash. Yes, we've done single barrel picks. Maybe one day, Kenny, we can do a single barrel pick of Pursuit 90. That'd be great for our patrons, right? That'd be amazing, right?
Hop in line.
Guys, let's get in line. What do you think?
Todd likes to cut in line.
Well, listen, let's hop in line. Let's do it. I mean, I think
I do want to ask. I know you've tried probably a lot of whiskeys. It's kind of helped build your portfolio. Have you tried any of these whiskeys?
Excellent. Okay, what you guys are all waiting for tonight on our live stream, our members only giveaway is something very special. We are giving away our top 5 whiskeys of 2020 to a lucky winner. Those are going to be the Knob Creek 12-year Select, the Wild Turkey Rare Breed Ride, the Rare Breed Masters Tier 17, the Old Crow Double Barrel 47, and then the Maker's Mark's P90X. All absolutely amazing bourbons that you can't find easily that Andy has. One lucky member will get it. So we can't wait to see you tonight, 8:30 p.m. And we'll have some fun. Cheers. I'm at the beach. That's where the live stream will be.
Haunt me for the rest of my life. So 4 years ago, Kenny, I didn't know much about whiskey, evidently. As you can see, I thought P90X was actually a Maker's Mark product. And you can see, so the
it actually sounds like it could be, though, with all the.
It does.
I mean,
thank you.
That's very good.
The Old Crow Double Barrel 47.
I got a P90X story for you. So I did a P90X once, but I had no idea how hard it is. So anybody out there that's actually finished and done a P90X, like hats off to you. That is one of the most difficult programs I've ever done in my life. And I think I only made it to like a P30X is all I made it. So it was, but even the yoga videos were intensely difficult.
No, that whole thing is crazy. I remember I was in college and one of my roommates was on the basketball team. And they were doing the Tybo. Remember the Tony Blank's Tybo commercials you used to see all the time?
Yeah.
And they had a class, and we're like, this would be a great way to go down and meet some of the girls. Let's do that. Let's just put one of the discs in, just see how tough it is. Lasted about 5 minutes. Said, nope. There's got to be ways of doing this. So it was just So
well, speaking of single barrels, though, and to change topics, you guys do one of the things I wanted to cover tonight was sort of your whole shebang. So I think it's I know you've talked about it a lot. I'm not sure our audience knows about it, but when you think of doing single barrels, we go to a distillery, we pick for our patrons, and maybe we invite a couple patrons with us, and we get that experience. But not the masses don't get to experience that sort of event of going through barrels, sieving things out, trying it, figuring out what you like, and picking that barrel. You guys have sort of made that experience available to the masses. Help us explain what that sort of single barrel program and sort of whole shebang offering at Pursuit 90's is. I think it's fantastic.
For sure. Thank you for bringing that up too. This is something that we love to talk about, because this is sort of a brainchild from Ryan and I. When we opened up our spot here, we actually didn't want to do tours. Like, we're just like,
Right.
why would anybody want to come in here and see a warehouse? Like, there's nothing great about this place.
Maybe, right? It's a you. Meet you.
Well, I mean, part of it was when we announced that we had this place, of course, we got hit up by people and on Patreon and like, hey, can I just come by and see stuff and whatever? And like, yeah, sure. And then it became real evident real quick that we were spending a bunch of time giving away a bunch of whiskey. And we're like, okay, we can't be doing this anymore. It's like
here, take some of this, take some of that. Yeah.
Well, it's just like we're wasting an hour and a half of our time, and it's all good. It's like, not
I get
wasting,
it, though.
but we're spending an hour and a half of our time talking to somebody, and we're giving them free whiskey, and we're like, all right, have a good day. And we're like,
what just happened?
Well, I mean, we're still doing our day jobs. We're trying to figure out how to build this thing, and it's just like, we're trying to be nice. And I said, we've got to do something. Like, we've got to, we can open up for tours. And I said, again, how can we be different? What can we do that nobody else is doing around here? Because there's nothing to tour. You come in here, I'm not walking you by a grain bin. You're not going to sit there and touch a still. You're not drinking White Dog. Like, it's not going to be your typical tour. So I said, well, how do we showcase what we're doing? And it really wasn't until our Pursuit United Private Select program was born, which is how we said, all right, well, we have single barrels now. What's the coolest thing that you can do in whiskey? Select your own single barrel. Like, there's
100%.
There's literally nothing better. I would highly argue if there's anything better than that, and feel free to tell me.
I don't know. Do you?
What?
Then picking your own single barrel.
I mean,
in whiskey,
for a whiskey world, no, it's
but nobody gets that experience, and this is where you come in. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, and that's kind of where it all stemmed from. It's like, people have the fill your own bottle experience, but when you sit there and you put a bottle underneath the spigot and you pull a lever, and I'm kind of like, you paid $150 for that, and you're gone in 5 minutes. That seems pretty lame. And hats off to Whiskey Thief. They do an amazing job of letting you sit there and taste from a bunch of different stuff. But it's kind of, you just go up and you get a glass and you go and socialize or whatever.
Right.
And I said, this is really where we can kind of pick and piece and find great components from everywhere. So what if we kind of brought the barrel pick experience to everybody? So what you'll do is you'll come in, and part of the whole shebang, it's $150 all in, and you'll get a first taste of United Bourbon, United Rye. Tim and Joe, there are guides, and so they'll tell you about the first 15-20 minutes. It's kind of the story that we've talked about. It's the story of the podcast, how we grew into the whiskey company, and then talking about the bourbon and the rye, the partners we work with, how the blend is done, and sort of how we got to this point. Then you'll have a seat. There'll be pre-poured 6 barrel samples in front of you, and you'll go through as if you were doing a barrel selection. You'll taste through 6 different barrels, figure out which one speaks to you. And the part about doing a barrel selection is that it's usually a democracy, is that you have to come agree on which barrel we're going to select. And sometimes
which can be difficult.
You have to go with an odd number when you do a barrel selection, because if not, you're always going to end up in a split decision. So you got to bring an odd number of people. But thankfully, you don't have the fiduciary responsibility of buying an entire barrel, but instead you figure out which of those barrels speaks to you. Which one do you like best? I mean, I can't tell you how many people have come in here and be like, I hate rye whiskey. I don't buy rye whiskey. And then all of a sudden they're leaving home with a rye.
That's
bourbon.
Amazing.
Or it's like, well, me and my wife were here, and we have completely different palates, and this is so great because she likes barrel 1 and I like barrel 3.
Yeah, right.
And that way, you figure out which barrel speaks to you. Then you go grab an empty bottle from our bottling line. You grab a Whiskey Thief. You fill the bottle up with a Whiskey Thief straight from the barrel. Then from there, you take it through our bottling line. And so you'll put a cork on it. You'll run it through the label machine, and you'll write a few things on the back of it to kind of denote, the day you were here, the event, or why you came here, and stuff like that as well. And so it's been great. I mean, that's kind of been one of those things that, we have, we just crossed a little bit over 150 5-star reviews on Google. which is amazing for being 1 year in business. And knowing that people are really digging this because we're truly creating something that's unique, nobody else is offering. And this kind of speaks back into the whiskey geek element of knowing that, like, I want to do something that nobody else gets access to. I don't want to go and just, look at more bushels of corn. Like, let's do something fun.
And it connects your consumers with you, right? So that experience of going through and tasting various barrels and then picking the one you like the most and coming away with a bottle that you fill then from that barrel and then bottling it and putting the label on, that connects them with you. If you want to see this, go to It's Bourbon Night. Chad and Sarah have a really good video on their YouTube page, kind of like detailing that entire process. And it really shows what this is about. So anybody out there in our audience that hasn't seen this, go to It's Bourbon Night. You know who they are. Check out Chad and Sarah. Find the Bourbon Pursuit sort of whole shebang experience. What's the official title? Is it whole shebang or it's
the whole shebang?
Whole shebang. I don't know if that's what they have it titled, but it's a really good video that shows you this whole process. Now, if you wanted to come to Kentucky or in Louisville and you're going, you're staying there, do you have to, I guess you sign up for this on your website? That's how you get reservations, I assume, or can you just walk in, or how's that work?
No, everything's booked online in advance.
There you go.
So go to pursuitspirits.com. There'll be a visit us button right there in the top right, or in your drop down in your mobile hamburger menu. And from there, you just book the time and the date that works for you.
Can you make a blend? Somebody, JG's asking, can you make a blend of it? Can you take two different barrels and blend it together?
Yeah, it's one of those kind of unwritten rules of it now.
Right.
It's because we always said, like, well, if you think you can blend it better than us, go for it.
All right. Hey,
but there are some, it's the only thing we don't allow you to do is sort of cross pollinate between the bourbon and the rye barrels, because it's like, well, we don't want to be not in compliance with the TTB. So, and we don't have because that would technically be an American whiskey, not a bourbon or a rye. So it's like, if you want to blend like a couple of the bourbon barrels together, fine. A couple of rye barrels together, fine, but just not cross-pollinating. That way, and you can call it whatever you want. Like, it doesn't bother us. And I think that just kind of makes it more fun for the end consumer is that, if you want to blend, sure, go for it.
So you could do your P90X, Todd.
We could do it.
You could do that.
Well, I don't know if we would call this one P90X if we do a single barrel pick for our Patreons. It wouldn't be just our single, we'd buy a whole barrel. Let me ask you this. You mentioned early on you're moving to Whiskey Row in April possibly. So how is that going to change? So are you keeping where you're at now and that's where that experience will be? And then sort of the Whiskey Row will be more of how will that change? Like, so help us understand what that new space is going to be for and what should we look forward to in that regard?
Yeah, we're always going to have this space as long as we continue to rent it out. Our distillery is definitely going to be our back end for operations, blending, bottling, offices, just anything that we need to get stuff in and out. It can also be for overflow, very large parties, anything like that as well. But our Whiskey Row location is truly going to be the new home for our visitor center experience, where people are going to kind of go and connect with the brand. I'll kind of paint a picture for you of what it's going to look like as well. For anybody that happens to be walking down Whiskey Row here shortly or within the next couple weeks or anything like that, we are going to be situated right next door to Bardstown Bourbon Company. Green River has already announced they're going to be on the other side of us, so we'll be sandwiched in between both of them. We're
Not bad at all.
Location.
We're catty corner to Michter's, right next to the Louisville Slugger bat right there too.
That's
So
awesome. Yep.
it's not gonna be hard to find us. We have a green facade with gold trim and newly freshly sanded down doors that look really good right now. But what you'll do is you'll walk into the building. You'll actually enter in through an old freight elevator that was there. Funny story is that this was the original freight elevator that was for the building, and when they were trying to get it out, they didn't want to snap any cables. They didn't want anything to fall down. They ended up having to poke a hole in the roof and bring a crane and actually crane out the old elevator because they were scared that like it was just going to fall and hurt somebody and just break.
Cool.
So yeah, they had to crane that whole thing out.
That's really cool.
The counterweights and all that sort of stuff, because it wasn't functioning. And from what somebody said is they said this was probably brought in on horse and buggy. Is how old that freight elevator is. It's late 1800s is how old this building is.
But anyway, beautiful area. I mean,
yes.
you couldn't be a better spot.
Yeah. So you'll walk through this freight elevator, and then you'll have our first kind of like retail area. And inside that retail area, hats, t-shirts, bottles, all that sort of stuff will be there. Then you'll go through the hallway. There'll be a little bit of a waiting area, and then you'll have 2 very large classrooms. And so the first classroom is where the whole shebang will be moving. So there'll be 6 barrels in there, same exact concept, taste through them all, fill the bottle up, everything like that as well. And then the classroom after that will be sort of a sit down area where we could do things like a guided tasting with all of our core products. We could do food pairings. We could do tons of other different ideas that we have going through there, just to kind of give you spill the tea a little bit on new things that are coming. As I'd mentioned, we started switching a lot of our barrels over to char 1 versus char 3 and char 4, but we still kept char 2, char 3, and char 4 in very small quantities. And that's because later down the line, well, let's see what the whiskey tastes like when it's at char 1, char 2, char 3, char 4. So just giving people more opportunities to have like kind of really unique tasting experiences that we're doing there. So you'll have that classroom. Then in the back, there'll be a separate private tasting room as well. So if anybody wants something that's like led by Ryan or I, or anything that we could think of as just kind of like a very intimate space that probably fits less than 10 people.
Oh, wow.
That's what it's going to be there for. And then in our basement,
that's amazing.
Going to be full on cocktail bar, tasting bar. So there's a room, I think, for like 70 seating in the basement there. So just we're working on staffing and building out general manager, head bartender, everything like that. The podcast studio moving down there. There's going to be a small area that we'll have for catering that can come in if they need. I don't want to call it a kitchen because it's not a commercial kitchen. Our core competency is not making sure that chicken fingers come out on time and not cold. I really want to focus on cocktails and small bites. And so that's really what it's going to be. And there'll be
go ahead. Sorry. No, I was going to say, you said the podcast studio there. Will you do live podcasts? Like, will people be able to go watch you do a live episode with or no? Is that something that's
I mean, so the podcast studio kind of have this sort of fishbowl effect to it.
Yeah, right.
So,
right. Yep.
I mean, we'll definitely announce when we'll be doing recordings. We're probably not going to change our recording schedule because we have it on a pretty good cadence. Sure. But when we have Connor Driscoll from Heaven Hill come in and we're going to do a podcast, we'll announce it. And we want people to be there. It's like, go grab a drink at the bar, pull up a live stream on your phone. You can watch it and listen to it in real time as we're in there. Then after we're done, you can come out, you can meet them, whatever it's going to be.
Right.
We look at it that Bourbon Pursuit was really built around the community, and we still want the community to be a part of this. And the good thing about the whiskey side of the business is that everybody does see it that way to a degree. And, we want to try to elevate and build the personalities that are around us. And by doing that, we hope that we can give back for everybody that gave back to us. And this is just one of those things that it's like, Connor, or, Brent Elliott, or name it, whoever, and they just happen to be at our place doing a podcast with us. Like, let's give people an opportunity to meet them.
That's right.
And you can listen to it in real time, as you're sitting down there having a drink at the bar.
That's awesome. I love it. That's great. I'm going to say this. You're a very good orator. You speak well. You're eloquent. Your delivery is great. Your cadence, your pacing, all that stuff. You're a polished professional. So we have to give you a question to make you think a little bit, because it's just been too easy for you tonight.
Okay.
Oh God. Here we go.
You're going to your deserted desert island. You can only bring 3 albums with you.
3 musical albums.
3 musical albums.
CDs? Is it CDs or albums?
CDs. Whatever,
CDs.
Whatever his choice is. If he's got his phone charged, he can bring a phone with 3. But you can only put 3 albums on it.
3 albums on there.
What are you bringing,
man,
and why? Tell us. The people want to know.
That's a hard question, Andy.
It is a hard question. And here's the reason why it's hard. You're a big Def Leppard fan. I'm sure there's a lot of classic rock fans out here and everything like that. I'm not. You say I'm not. Well, I am definitely the outlier in my music choice, because I listen to electronic music and mostly like dubstep and stuff like that. Right. And it's like I've gone to plenty of festivals of Ultra and Electric Daisy Carnival and all that sort of stuff. And so I would have to probably not be albums. I'd have to choose like artists by any
Okay,
means.
there you go. There
when
you
I
go.
go to that.
Perfect.
Fair
When I
enough.
go to
We can do
that,
artists. We'll give you
so-
a shout out to artist.
Yeah. So when I say this sort of stuff, people are going to be
This is
like,
chronic. This is
yeah.
chronic.
and it's, and here's the thing is like, I'm also a child of, growing up in the gangster rap era. So,
all right.
the
Joe Graves is
Tupac,
back.
yeah,
There you go. There you
Tupac,
go.
Biggie, Chronic, Dre, Snoop, like all that sort of stuff. Like that was very influential of like
Yeah,
just
like,
knowing all that shit back then.
Brian Tracy
Hell
tried
yeah.
to get me to go to a 3-day Fish concert. I was a bit scared. I was a bit scared.
You wouldn't have lasted 10
I
minutes.
wouldn't have
and all
lasted
the
a day.
shit done.
But he
Yeah.
went to Delaware. He's like, come out. I'm like, Brian, I got something to do. I'm sorry, I just can't do that because I don't know if I'll come back alive.
All right, so who are these artists?
All right. So
let's do
back
it.
to the
Here
artists.
we
So one, maybe that even listens to this, like Slander has like been one of my biggest ones.
Don't know who that is, but it's
Yep.
okay.
Excision's another big one.
Don't know
shout
that
out
either.
X up there. And then the other one that is probably a good gateway for anybody that's really into rock is if you listen to a guy named Sullivan King. He is
Michael Bow. No.
he is
Michael
definitely definitely not Michael Bolt. But like I said, if you're into rock and you want to see kind of have like rock and EDM kind of like mesh worlds here, like Sullivan King is your guy because it's like heavy metal is mixed with like heavy dubstep.
Nice.
I thought that I was nuts when I said I had Def Leppard and Barry Manilow in like my 3 albums that would come to the. You've beat me in
Yes.
uniqueness here. I
Very
was
much
not
so.
expecting that at all.
Very much so.
I'm gonna have to go back and look these people up to see who they are. 'Cause I didn't know
like
who the hell
like
they
I
are.
said,
This is-
I'm sure that's most people's not.
Andy,
what
we're
they
dating
really
ourselves,
know.
by the way. We're dating ourselves with our it's now classic rock. It's not 80s rock. It's classic rock.
It is
It's
classic.
the same damn thing. It's fine. What 90s music doesn't count.
No, but
That's-
when we were
that's
growing up,
grunge
classic
nonsense.
rock was like 60s and 70s. Now our music in the 80s is classic rock. That's the problem here.
Whatever.
Yes.
We're
that's
not
what it
that.
is.
We're not that old. Maybe we are.
We are actually that old, so it's okay. It's all right. Anyway,
It's
Well,
that's probably one of those times where I always would default to Ryan. I'm like, Ryan, just tell him the country albums you listen to, and then I'll just shut up. Because anytime
That's
I get
great.
into these conversations, I was just like, yeah, nobody's gonna have any idea what I listen to.
All right, sports. Who do you root for out there?
I
in
don't think he's a
Kentucky?
sports
Are
fan.
you any sports fan? Like a football team? Like anybody you root for?
I mean, I graduated from UK, so
All right.
I'm
There you
a
go.
Wildcat.
Yeah.
You're a Wildcat. All right.
My dad was a season ticket holder to the Bengals for a very long time, so got to go to my fair share of Bengals games as well.
sorry about that.
Yeah, well, that was back when they were terrible too.
Yeah, right, I
Not
get
even
you.
when they had Burrow. Like I'm talking
Yeah, right.
like a decade
Outside
plus
of
ago.
the icky shuffle. What
Oh,
was
yeah,
that?
there you
Yeah,
go.
but
Yeah.
that's before your time too. So that's fine. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and so like I said, those are where my allegiances lie.
That's awesome. My last question for Kenny is thinking about like sort of you mentioned a lot tonight with Pursuit and the podcast, and what are you most excited about in terms of what you and Ryan and the whole brand is doing? Maybe it's just everything. I'm curious what you're really most excited for in terms of what's next.
Yeah, thank you for that question. I guess the obvious one is I want to pay ourselves.
Yeah. Get a paycheck.
Because
What up?
everybody
Yeah.
says, yeah.
Hey,
Love the-
that's a novel thing, but let's
Yeah.
get paid.
It's
Yeah.
like we're gonna have we're gonna have the best year Pursuit has ever done. When you see the doom and gloom of everybody talking, it's like whiskey's flooded on the shelf and Brown Forman stock is down 20%, blah 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 blah, and it's like we're gonna end up 60% up this year compared to last year, and we're gonna beat our goal of 1.3 million in revenue to 1.6 million. So it's like we're doing really well, and it's like we just want to keep this trajectory going.
I love it.
I'm excited to build the business because I truly feel like we're in probably the most unique opportunity than anybody else. I don't think anybody else has our story. Nobody else has a product like we do. We're truly trying to do something unique and just completely off the wall compared to anybody else. It's like, we're not building a distillery. We're not doing this. Like we're trying to find our own path and carve it. And we're finally starting to see years of work and laying essentially the foundation starting to come to fruition, and finding our tribe and finding the people that agree with the whiskey that we're putting out, because we don't rely on those three crutches that I talked about.
Right.
So I'm excited to see the trajectory of where Pursuit Spirits is going. Obviously, downtown we're banking on being a huge driver for us and getting the word out there even more beyond the whiskey enthusiast landscape, but into the more general populace. And in regards of just the bourbon market, what am I looking forward to? I think we're in a tumultuous time right now where the big guys are starting to figure out the pinch, and they're starting to worry. We're thankfully not going to worry, because at our biggest scale, what we plan to be at in late 2030, 2032, will be 50,000 6-pack case brand, 25,000 9 liters, if that breaks it down for you, for anybody that's in the industry. Like, that is a drop in the bucket. That is one release of Elijah Craig barrel proof per year, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
we're going to be very, very small in regards of, we'll still be niche and boutique, and that's really where we're going to be.
And I think that's great. I think people like that today. I really do. I think it appeals to the everyday drinker more than it ever used to when everyone was chasing the next ECBP coming out. And I think you're in a good spot with that. I really do.
And I think that what I'm really looking forward to is seeing how the dynamic of the whiskey world is going to change, because I don't feel that a lot of the big guys and gals, we'll just say big organizations, they can't rely on everything that they've been doing for the past 5, 6, 8 years to just continually keep working. The whiskey consumers changed. Don't get me wrong, people are still going out and buying their bottles of Maker's Mark because they like the red wax, but you're going to see those $20, $30 brands, they're not exciting to people like us anymore, right? People like us that are always we're the neophytes. We want to find what's next. We want to find what's new. We want to find something that is gonna captivate us. It's not going to be Elijah Craig small batch. And so we, as enthusiasts, we are pushing everybody to try harder. And I think that's what is making me excited about why we live in this golden age of whiskey, is that everybody's trying harder. They're trying to capture our attention with, new types of releases, new finishes, new oak experiments, like whatever it is. And that's how we have to keep continually pushing this envelope.
One last question for you, Kenny, and Whiskey Knows, Marty mentions, your single barrel program is a great way to get the brand out there to the masses for tasting experience. It's exceptional. My question is, you and Ryan have done so many single barrel picks through your Patreon over the years. How is it being on the other side now, where you have groups coming in, and now you're on the other side of that, right? Where for so many years you were doing the picks and going through and picking barrels and maybe rejecting barrels. How is it being on the other side now and being,
like, does my ego get hurt?
Well, no. What is that like? Because you went through the process so much, it so well. And then you have groups come in there, and I don't know, how is that experience? How is that for you? What is that like?
It is a learning experience, just because we do get all walks of life that come from here, because you'll be dealing with store owners that are like, I've picked 14,000 barrels in my life, and blah, blah, blah. And just like, all right, well, I don't know what you want, man. Like, this is what we have.
What we got. Yeah.
And they're like, you got anything special in the back? I'm like, no, like, this is like, what's here is here. I don't know what to tell you. And they're like, well, they did this for me. I was like, sorry, I'm not taking you out to lunch. Like, that wasn't in the email. Like, we're not taking you. So, in regards of just like doing the barrel picks, like, we're learning more or less what it is on the other side, and how to cater to certain people. And that's just part of what it is.
Yeah.
There is also, not going to say imposter syndrome, but there also is this feeling of, I hope they like what they're here for.
Sure.
Because to be fair, it's like, you tried the seal box.
Yeah.
Great. I'm so glad you tried that. before coming in and selecting a barrel from us, because most people will try, our huge like butterscotch bomb that we have as a part of our double oak, which is a standard one.
Yep.
And I don't want them coming in and thinking, oh yeah, I'm ready to get me a, butterscotch, just thinking that's off the wall.
We're looking for something unique like this. That's what we're looking for. That's
and
what
I'm just I hate to tell you, that's ours. Like you don't, you don't get to choose the butterscotch. Like that's our thing.
Right.
Like, but we've got 14 other things that you can choose from.
Right.
And so, it's an expectation setting. But for the most part, it's just learning people, finding out what makes them tick. And it is a good learning experience. So far, Ryan and I have been on every single barrel selection that people have come through here. That is one of the things that Ryan and I, we try to make a concerted effort of making sure that we are here for them, because it's a big buy. And for us, we couldn't be more thankful that people are going to take a flyer on us and try to, put these bottles in their store and sell them and help build the brand for us. I mean, that's truly what it is. And thankfully, everything that we've been putting out our double oak line has just been phenomenal. People love it. And we just want to keep that trajectory going.
Do you see that increasing, the sort of the single barrel, the true single barrel, not the whole shebang? I know that's ingrained and it's something you guys do really well, but the true single barrel program, is that going to expand at Pursuit over the years, or how do you deal with that?
As into like more product lines or something like
well,
that?
No, just in terms of doing more single barrels. You only have so much, So is that something you're okay? All right.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to have to. We're going to have, and to give you a kind of an idea going into, maybe it's just because I lack holding transparency here, but so going into next year, we are going to have almost maybe just a little bit more the same amount of whiskey we had to sell this prior year. Which means in talking to our friends at Old Forester and Peerless and whatnot, we're finding out that they sell, I won't give away the numbers, but it's a good percentage of product that gets sold out of there per month. And we were going like, holy crap, we're going to sell 70% of all the inventory we have through our gift shop next year.
Wow.
And I don't know if we're going to be able to even supply our distribution partners until 2026 comes online. And we're going to have a lot more whiskey that we started putting down back in 2021, and that'll become available for us. But when 2026, and like I said, we're still going to have plenty of single barrels going into 2025, but 2026, we'll have even a lot more that we'll be able to supply for folks that want them. And, we've been fortunate that people know us. We've done plenty of private barrels already that ain't really going through stores. So, I mean, if people are turning you away, talk to Pursuit. I'm sure we can find a spot in line for you.
There you go. Hey, you hear that, Patreon members? Maybe we can find a spot in that line. Andy, I'm excited when we go out.
Are you going to go out?
Yeah, I'll go out. See Kenny? Meet Kenny?
Todd's usually not allowed outside the state of Maryland. So
it's not true. I've been to Kentucky a few times. Stop it, Andrew.
It's a Southwest one-way flight from Baltimore.
We've actually, exactly, we've been to MGP. We were lucky enough to be on the grounds of MGP. So that's pretty cool, I think.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Like, to be honest with you, Kenny, it is there's a lot of people in this industry that just want to make a quick buck and figure out how to do that. And this is not the industry to do that in. You've put in the time, you've put in the effort, you've started and I loved your
what do you always say?
Def Leppard rules.
People before product.
People before product. That too. I think that you let it off this whole stream when you were introducing yourself about saying that you wanted to be unique, you wanted to be different. Little things like learning the cameras and the angles. Ignorance is bliss when you start these things. You never see the big picture. You just don't see what's coming. I think that's what's amazing about what you guys are doing. I really do. And I think it's the authenticity that's coming through and shining when you are talking to our audience. I've learned a lot tonight.
Yeah.
I think our audience did too. And it just makes me want to, learn more, drink more, kind of get into it, because this is, you're doing it the right way. And I think that always pays dividends, no matter how long it takes. So we're really honored that you were with us tonight.
Yeah, BT says Ryan and Kenny are the coolest and make great whiskey, followed by us, Andy. So we're behind Kenny and Ryan. I'll take that. I will take that.
Look, I'm going to tell you a quick story then, Kenny, real quick before we go. It's bedtime. I've got my two young kids, and I'm reading a story, and I get this text message or this email, and it's like, hey, I don't know if you guys are interested, but I'd love to set up a call with you, Brian Treacy from Sagamore.
Years ago.
And I'm like, is this a joke? We were afraid to call Brian, even though they're in our backyard.
This was years ago.
It was like, there's no way that they would want to do anything with us. Brian reached out to us saying, sorry, I haven't reached out prior. I'm thinking, are you kidding me? But there are still good people in the whiskey world. And I got to tell you, I like that. He's one of them. Kenny, it sounds like you and Ryan are right up there too, which is awesome. So we do appreciate you very much.
Kenny, thank you so much for coming on tonight. It's been a pleasure, and I hope our audiences loved you. Hopefully, you guys have felt a little bit more connected to, Pursuit United and Bourbon Pursuit podcast, and hopefully we'll get out to and maybe do a single barrel for our patrons. I'd love to do that one day.
You're happy.
I would love to do that, Kenny. So we'll be in touch. How about that?
We can make it happen.
There you go, brother.
There you go.
Guys, everybody give a big round of applause to Kenny from Pursuit United Bourbon Podcast. Kenny, we'll be in touch soon. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
Well, I love, by the way, first off, thank you again for allowing me to come on here. But I also always love to do a sign off and say thank to you all, because I know being in the media space, what this is like, finding guests, figuring out what it is. Depending on what you do, sometimes afterwards for editing, cutting, marketing, publishing, all that sort of stuff. Most people that come on here, they have no idea that the hour and 45 minutes that we've been live is the easiest hour and 45 minutes of it all. Sitting here talking, and there's just so much work that goes in the back end and making sure that you create a good persona, you create your branding, you create all these different things. So thank you to you all for doing what you are doing and making sure that you continue to spread bourbon and everything that is happening inside of this ecosystem.
It's our pleasure. We're honored to have you on here.
You're looking great. Chat loves it.
And before you go, it doesn't really matter. Hysteria or Pyromania, they're both fantastic albums to get you introduced to Def Leppard. I suggest you pick one, spin it, and you can come back on.
So, Kenny, when we come out for a barrel pick, just have Def Leppard playing for just to
I'm going to bring it to him. I'm going to bring it to him. And, you know what? If he can't get into it, then I'll have some additional follow-up questions. I mean, I haven't met anybody yet that can't be wowed by the power of Elliot's voice. So we'll be in good shape.
Joe Gray says, thank you for filling your Make-A-Wish donation. We'll take it, Joe. Whatever. We'll take it.
We appreciate you, Kenny.
Awesome.
Thank you, brother, very much.
Kenny Coleman, Pursuit United. Thank you, Kenny.
Thank you, sir. We appreciate you.
You got it. Cheers.
Cheers, brother.
Cheers.
Thank you, man. So there you go, guys. Kenny from what a great. That was a fantastic.
I mean, I mentioned at the end, you just say people before product.
Just a nice guy, man. But the story's amazing. The progression, the journey, all that, absolutely amazing. It was just so funny. There was so many things that reminded me of our journey. We're very much like that, except we're not as attractive, good-looking, articulate, or successful.
Talented,
but other than that, I mean, our stories mimic.
Other than that, really we're two guys that are lifelong friends,
we're just like Ryan and Kenny.
We still have our day jobs. We don't take a paycheck from this thing. We lose money, and we make crappy beer. They make really good whiskey. But other than that, it's exactly the same.
So,
exactly,
guys, we're gonna sign off. Look, I know it's gotten late. We just want to say one last thing.
Yes.
The old line kind of Christmas pick that we've done for you guys is coming.
It's a rum right there.
It is a rum.
Look at this
our first ever rum, which is absolutely fantastic.
That's the rum, guys.
It is the Rum Guns Port of Glory. You can see that right there. Look top. You don't look bad with the.
I wish I had a cowboy hat on. Yeah.
Well, we all wish you had some sort of hat on.
We'll talk more about that next week.
So we are going to give you all the specifics. Stay with it. Guys, we appreciate you very much.
Yep. We'll see you next Tuesday.
Happy Thanksgiving, everybody.
Hope you enjoyed that. There you go. That's the old line single barrel rum pick. We'll see you next Tuesday with that and BCS and all the good stuff.
So thank you, guys. Cheers.
Cheers.
Rock on.